So Pete, in previous episodes of Free to Be, we've talked about this dream of empowering big, free people who take personal responsibility to lead themselves and to pursue their dreams. And I think in our guts sometimes that can make us a little nervous.
Yeah, I think so. I think people can be a bit scared about what free people will do. And for me, it's a bit like when you're raising your kids. You know, as they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, they actually come up with more and more ideas. And you have to learn how to, for them to become self-controlled in their own right and manage their own freedom. But I want my kids to be free, don't you?
Absolutely. And I think that the fear is what choices will people make. Mm-hmm. I think fear is what choices will our kids make. The fear could be looking at the people and saying, actually, if this is a free-to-be culture, will there be anarchy? Will people just be self-indulgent, just looking after their own interests?
Yeah, I think people have to... that's the whole point. It's a cultural journey of creating an environment of freedom, where it's freedom with responsibility, freedom with that element of self-control, which is actually one of the things we want to talk about, isn't it? You know, that sense of I manage my choices, not just in a selfish, indulgent way, but with the view of I'm part of a community. It's like sometimes I think in a family setting, now you've got children, I've got children. I was free to do what I wanted, but there's lots of things I didn't choose to do because actually I'm part of a family and a loving relationships. Actually, you choose what you do with your freedom. And same in a marriage, isn't it? When you get married, you're joining together something, and if you're both self-indulgent with your freedom, you'll end up with a bad marriage or no marriage.
And I think that when that fear kicks in, fear of what choices will people make, I think that's when control comes in. And that's really what we're going to be talking about, is the difference between a controlling culture and a culture of self-control. Yeah,
and we've been talking about it, is when you're in a culture and it's your normal culture, you don't necessarily recognise it for what it is. And I remember back early days of Christianity, because when I was born again in my late teens, and you were born again sort of a little bit older than that, but both of us from a basic non-religious background, both of us for the same. I didn't know how to do church. And Kim, my wife, was born again about the same time as me, so same. So we put ourselves into a culture where we had to assume that this is the normal Christian culture because we had no other reference. And I would say it was a great culture, but it had quite a lot of control mechanisms within it that would have been mitigated against freedom. And and over the years, I've seen many churches where we're really free. But I don't think you trust your people to be free. Do you see what I mean? So you make decisions for them, and benignly, with good intention. And I remember one church leader I know described himself as a benign despot. I thought, that's quite an insightful description. It's not a good description for a Christian leader, but it was quite insightful. He said, I make the decisions because I know what I'm doing around here, and they don't understand. These people don't understand.
Very interesting, because culture is the way we do things. Culture is the way I do things. Someone said culture is like the water that fish swim in.
Yes.
So you could be swimming around and you could be incredibly controlling. Like that statement says, I'm a benign despot, which is an incredibly controlling statement, but it can sound like pastoral wisdom.
Yeah, and everybody loved this church, and he was a nice guy, lovely guy. But I was intrigued by this self-description of himself. He said, I recognise this. I make the decisions, and it was with a good attitude. But ultimately, and over the years, I thought it requires people to stay in a place of immaturity. That attitude.
Yes.
So if we want people to come through to full maturity, like our kids growing up, they make their own choices, and they might not be our choices. And if you can't allow people to get to that place, then there's an implied immaturity that's required within Christianity. And I think that exists within a lot of church cultures, that people adapt themselves to that, so they actually don't even aspire to
don't grow to
that. They don't think they can, aspire to that.
That's so true, and I think it control. We wouldn't say I'm a controlling person. We would kind of say it's a good intention.
Yeah.
We might think I don't want people to be disappointed, Like you said, if they mature and have a go and it doesn't quite work, or they don't get the resources, or other people don't get behind them, they're going to be disappointed. So we might control opportunities, resources, permission.
Yeah, we're trying to guard people from emotional trauma, difficulty, disappointment, and it's like an overprotective parent, isn't it? Overprotective parents actually don't produce healthy children in the end. Now, there is a sense of when a person is first born again, they're a baby Christian, but you don't want to leave them like that. It's like, sometimes, I don't know if you ever think about this, who's in control of the relationship between a newborn baby and its parents? Who's in control of that relationship? I think it's fascinating, because actually it's the baby who's in control, because everybody responds to that baby's needs.
Just one cry.
And everybody, they're not ignored, but it's the parents are actually, in one sense, in control, because that baby's completely dependent. But that's the last thing you want, is our children to remain like that.
Yes.
And so it should be the aspiration of all church leaders that all of their congregation come to a place of great maturity where they are free to be all that God's called them to be, but they won't get there unless they have free cultures which are free of control mechanisms that would limit their ability to get there, I think.
And I think to get to that place where you say my goal is people being free to be and be mature and be who they've been made to be, it does require a transformation of the way leadership views their role and responsibility.
Yes, it does. And it is tricky in one sense, because the Bible says that the elders of a church should shepherd their flock, guard it. So there is a guardian reality of that. But what does that mean? What does it look like? And I think there's a big learning curve to be taken for a lot of churches to learn how to live with free cultures. And again, it's like the old adage of saying, it's like herding cats. Do you see what I mean? It's,
yes.
I don't want to herd cats. No, it's much easier. And also the attraction of slavery, like we talked about with the, when the Israelites came out of Egypt, they wanted it. It's not just the leaders who actually sort of sometimes want this structure. It's actually the expectations that Christians have of their leaders, which is another thing that we've talked about a bit. Is I've seen it where some people who suddenly taken, they've developed into a place of significant leadership within the church, and then they suddenly have all these expectations from other people thrust upon them that they didn't realise was going to come their way, and then they try and meet all those expectations, and that can be overwhelming. And I've tried to teach people you can't do that. A number of years ago, I was asked by one of our congregation whether, and I was working with not just our church but other churches, whether I could meet everybody's expectations. I said, no, there's no way I can meet other people's expectations. I can only meet mine, really, and God's.
Right.
I said, the expectations upon me are crazy. And I recognise it. These people expect a lot more of me than I can ever give them. Not so much in our church, but in other churches. No, I was suddenly the oversight figure for a number of churches. They said, "Whoa, okay, can you do this?" And I remember one church wanted me to set their salary structure. I said, "I'm not doing that. It's not up to me." But you have to. Oh, I don't. It really was quite interesting. I thought, no, that's not my job. I think there is a massive pressure upon Christian leaders to meet other people's expectations.
Yeah, and there's a pressure internally in a leader, and there's also the transactional kind of thing that's happening between leaders and people.
Yeah.
So it seems to be people themselves are quite comfortable with a parent-child relationship. The leader's the parent, the people themselves remain the child, remain immature. And the kind of hierarchical idea that all the vision, all the ideas, all the faith is going to come from maybe one visionary leader or maybe a plurality of leaders.
Yeah, and I think, that's right. It's this sense of people adapt to that. And some people willingly adapt to it because it actually requires less effort, less responsibility if you're basically following other people's ideas. But one of the things that you've done this and we've done this, is teaching people to learn to dream. Now that's interesting.
That's huge.
It's huge. And, in our School of Spiritual Life, here the Eastgate School of Spiritual Life, we used to call it School of Supernatural Life, the first year we really work at getting the students to the place of actually confidence in their identity with God.
Right.
Generically, sons and daughters got an inheritance. The second year we really go into the more specifics. Okay, well, what's your specific calling of God? What's the dreams that God given you? Dare to tell us your dreams. Well, that is a massive challenge for most of the students. Because no, only dreams. Or daren't tell the dreams because they've been squashed down so many times. And I find this it's true within the healthcare world as well. A lot of Christians in the healthcare world, they go into that, vocation with great Christian dreams, but they then get squashed out of them. So actually dreams disappear. And I think that's one of the signs you say a free culture will actually be full of dreams.
Full of ideas, full of imagination, full of creativity, but control, the fear of a dreaming people that leads to control and limitation will never produce the maturity that's required for a person to believe, I can hear God for myself. I hear his voice. I can discern what he's saying. Yeah,
and I think if you've got a leadership structure which is basically follow the leader and the leaders are basically the tip of the spear of the, or the tip of the arrow, which is a common analogy. You say, okay, that's it, and we all follow that, and that this is the one that's really making all the breakthroughs. So it really depends on the leader's then capacity and ability and willingness to keep moving forward for everything to move on. Otherwise, it all backs up. There's a limitation. If this is not going anywhere, everybody's stuck back here. And the ones with I would say, spiritual ambition, courage, gumption, actually get out the sides of that, and then they start doing their own thing. And then in some cultures, that's regarded as rebellious.
Yes.
Because, don't do that. But if you've got we create good soil, anything can grow here culture, then actually, then literally the sky is the limit for people.
Absolutely.
And we're not trying to say what you can do. So I think that, what your image of leadership is it enabling, so anything can grow here, or is it follow me as a leader and I'm defining the limits of where this vision goes, and if we don't fit within it, you're not really in it.
Yeah.
Then that's different.
What's really interesting is I can notice in myself that even where your desire is for big, empowered people who dream, that as a leader, it's even possible to take over responsibility and even over function in the desire that they might dream.
Yes.
And
well, you're quite good at it. So tell me a bit more about that, because this is, your whole dream culture, the app that you've got and stuff like that, it's all centred around a lot of that.
In this whole thing, there's a sentence that Danny Silk says, it just gripped me. You do not have a superpower to control other people. And I think that's where controlling culture is so subtle, because it masquerades as love. Yep. And it masquerades as freedom. I want people to be free. But it leads to the thing of, I want you to go faster now because I've got dreams for you. Yep. And Danny Silk says people will only do what they're ready to do, face what they're ready to face. You can encourage, you can champion, you can cheer on, you can invite them in, but you can't control the timing in which people will do or embrace freedom.
I think one of the big cultural realities of a free culture is the ability to trust people.
Yes.
And you've got to trust them with their own spiritual walk, with their own spiritual dreams, and their own responsibilities towards the community that they exist in. So I think learning to trust people, and that's one of the things. I think control damages that, people. And I think there's a lot of unchurched Christians out there who have resisted being, or had enough of being controlled, and say, I don't trust my church leaders to enable me, in one sense. They might have had some troublesome things happen to them, but it could be just that frustration. I can never be myself here. And I think that's a massive challenge in the church at the moment, of that trust that leaders give away to other people, and then people give you back trust, don't they? That is a transaction that goes on. And
I trust you, and I trust the Holy Spirit in you, because I think that's the other thing where control comes in. It can be that pastoral thing of I've got to fix you.
Yes.
That somehow you're broken, and I've got to keep boundaries around you. I've got to keep things tight because you're a sinner.
Yes.
And if I don't pursue fixing you and keeping things tight around you, who knows what you're going to do? And I guess that's so different to a belief in a self-controlled culture.
Yeah. The fruit of self-control is, and I think, again, just another thought popped in my mind here, is the damage that suspicion does. But I think it's often viewed as wisdom. And basically God opened my eyes to this back in 2009. When Kim and I were actually over in Bethel for 3 months. And learning from them, being in their culture. And at the end of the 3 months, we were sitting down and just registering, written down, what we'd learned, what we'd experienced.
Okay.
And both of us came up with a conclusion that we could actually sum it all up in one word, which was the word freedom. And as we were saying this, we thought, actually, this is all aspects of freedom. And then I got this, it was from God, because it wasn't on our list, and it wasn't something I'd thought or articulated before. I said to Kim, hey, we've lived free of suspicion for 3 months. And then I thought, why did I think that? And I thought, then it made me examine my experience of, I think, Christianity up to that point, particularly British Christianity. I thought, we view suspicion as wise. And also, and if you've got a big dream, and it comes back to this, like this tall poppy syndrome and stuff like that actually you're not allowed to be big.
Who do you think you are?
Yeah, so we, you've got a calling from God. Was it really God? It's this sense of, it's a questions that really are putting the brakes on rather than actually helping the momentum be gained. And I think suspicion is endemic actually within Western Christianity, less so in the United States, I think, because I don't think it's much of a cultural reality, but I think it masquerades as wisdom.
Yeah, and I think it's that viewpoint. If I view the people as merely sinners who are saved, then it's kind of wise to be suspicious because sinners are prone to do what's wrong. But if I view them as saints who are prone to do what's right, and actually they do hear his voice, it changes my perspective on them, and it changes the trust that I feel towards them.
And can I trust them? Can I trust them to protect the environment themselves? So rather than me as the pastor or one of the elders, I believe that the duty for protecting the church is actually the whole churches. It's actually you create a culture, and now we direct it. But I can give you a good example of this. I told you about this. This is a story, and we got a lot of visitors to Eastgate, and some people, I even sometimes get emails in advance, people telling me they're coming, and some fun emails saying, I had one from one person, he said, just to let you know that I've been on your website and I don't agree with what you teach. I think
that's an interesting email.
Why did you want to come in the first place? And I could talk a bit about that another time maybe, but it's quite not uncommon, and often people think they need to find me if they're a visitor, to find the person that's going to give them opportunity and influence in the environment. So they've got a hierarchical mindset of how Eastgate works.
Okay, get to the top.
Eastgate doesn't work like that, but I understand that they think it does. So anyway, this one Sunday, this lady came up to me, first time in, there, and she said, hello, and she said, introduced herself, and she said, and then she got out a business card, which she says, and it was prophetess and her name. I think, that'd be interesting. She said, yes, I've got a prophetic gift, and we're here to visit Eastgate, and just want to see how you are, and are you open to the prophetic? I said, we love prophets and prophetic. That's very open. And she says, good. And this was after the meeting, and I'm standing in the cafe, chatting to her. And then we chatted for a few minutes, and then she's toddled off, and I just watched, and I was just in the cafe, and I was watching her. So I thought this would be interesting, and I watched her go and prophesy over one person, said, and now people are very open to that. They used to, somebody said, I've got prophecy for you. So thank you very much. Yeah. And over coffee. And I watched her, and she prophesied over this person, and I watched this person politely listen to her, then say, thank you very much, and just walk off. And I saw this lady was a bit bemused in her face. So she then did it with another person, and the same result, that actually it's a person listening, and I could see they were, okay, thank you very much, and off they. Well, she did it 4 times. Then she came back to find me. She said, I just need to let you know that your church is not open to the prophetic. I said, no, it is. It's just not open to you.
Yes.
What do you mean?
Because that's an interesting thing, because I think many leaders may have jumped in early, and certainly wouldn't have waited for the person to come to them with their reflection, because the leader would feel, I am the one who protects the environment, the culture, the soil. But you're saying that in a free-to-be environment is actually the people themselves that regulate and look after the culture.
Yeah, they protect it. Because basically what they say, what happened back to this lady, I said, I can tell you, I'm pretty certain I know what happened with you. See, our people basically, they weigh prophecy. They've been taught to weigh prophecy. They're taught to listen to it. They respect it, because that's what we do. And then if we treat prophecy with contempt, we don't weigh it. So actually we weigh it. And I suspect that you prophesy in an Old Testament mindset rather than a New Testament one, and that's why they have listened to you and not accepted what you said, because it doesn't flow with grace. It's more like to be sort of judgment and gloom and doom, and negative, or even very directive towards them of that you must do. And they've said no, thank you very much to that. Our culture is that, and I said to this lady, bless her, I said, if you want to learn from us, because you've obviously come here for a reason. You obviously, have heard about Eastgate, and she said, yeah, I've come here for a reason. And then I said, look, well, we can teach you how to adjust and change. And bless her, she stayed, she became part of Eastgate, and she adapted her prophetic gift to that reality. Because I was right, she did, and we had to have, bless, I give her full credit, because we had to have some very honest conversations as she learned, because she kept on doing it.
Yeah. And I think as well that another way that maybe some churches might have kind of protect the culture from that may have been only a prophetic team can prophesy.
Yeah.
We build structures around maybe our anxiety that someone might prophesy unhelpfully or not grace-filled prophetic words. So we build a system, a structure to make sure that doesn't happen by saying, here's the 5 people. If you want a prophecy, here are 5 people that we as leaders respect. They'll prophesy over you, but only them.
Yeah. And I think, so you've got people in the church, we've got a large church, and if people have been in this church for 10 years, if they're not mature by now to weigh a prophecy, then there's something wrong with our church. Do you see what I mean? There is. If they've not... So, again, it's that trust that's out there, but if we thought, I have to trust them, but it's like with my kids. My kids grow up, when they were young, I would hold their hand crossing the road. David's,
you're not doing that now.
No, David's in his 30s. You see, you get to the place, no, just trust them. You see, and the willingness to trust, because you're happy you're producing mature people. But if you don't think you can produce mature people, you will continually think you need to protect them.
Yeah, so leadership then is looking out, believing the identity that God says about them, they're saints, believing in the work of Holy Spirit who's giving the fruit of self-control, that actually believers can direct their energies wisely. They don't have to be impulsive. They can know what's important and choose the important over the urgent.
Yes.
That they can learn to pursue their calling, their gifting, run in their lane. They're going to do that when they're ready to and they want to. And we're there to maybe coach and ask good questions and bring advice.
Yeah, well, Jesus is the model of leadership that we try and... He was genius, wasn't he?
Yes.
But he never coerced anybody. He just did. He always invited them to follow. It marvels. I absolutely marvel at it. I think if you take Jesus as the model of leadership, then you think he never demanded that people follow him.
And never chased people to come back.
No, he didn't. He let the rich young ruler wander off. The 10 lepers, one came back. He said he was unconditional in the way that he interacted with people. Really interesting is, and like with the lady caught in adultery, he gives her instruction. Go away, sin no more. It's an instruction. We don't know whether she followed that instruction. We would hope. But you see, he didn't suddenly safeguard her around to make sure you need to come under my wing because obviously you've got terrible stuff going on in your life. But actually, extraordinary trust he placed in people. Gadarene demoniac, it's all sorts of things. You think, we'd have never done it like that. I think Peter, when he denied Jesus 3 times, we thought, well, this guy needs some serious retraining. Those 3 years weren't quite sufficient for you, mate. So you need to go back to the beginning. Jesus doesn't behave like that.
He gets a gracious recommissioning, doesn't he?
Yeah, and so Jesus trusts people even with their failures, because basically failures are one of the greatest learning tools, aren't they?
Yes.
And if we protect people from failure, we actually will stop them becoming mature.
Yeah, because maturity is, you hear God, you've got a dream, you've got a vision, you've heard his voice. Now, can you believe God to resource it? Can you believe God to give you the people around you who are going to work with you? Yeah. That's huge. Yeah,
and again, that's a really important point, because otherwise everything comes back to central resources. We have a lot. This is the danger of allowing people to dream, because actually, well, who's going to make these dreams happen? Well, God. It's not my responsibility to make your God-given dreams come true. Do you see that now? So if they're from God, then you pray and you act in faith, you will find that God enables them to come true. Now, sometimes they'll be coming true in the context of the community of the church, but actually there are things we're not trying to be in control of everything. People have got stuff going on at work, and you think, we're great. Actually, I had a fantastic email from couple this week who are moving on from Eastgate. They're moving away geographically for good reasons. So and it was a lovely email, and they said one of the things that struck them as soon as they came to Eastgate was the people doing all sorts of things that was actually out there in their life. They were just doing all sorts of stuff for God, which we had no directional control over.
That's very interesting, because I think even people can consider, say, leadership and can just be thinking only about the church structure, the church meeting. But yeah, you're right. If you empower big people, their dreams could be for healthcare, for education, for the law firm they work for. Yep. They could be doing extraordinary things because they're getting a culture of, I know my identity, I know Holy Spirit's in me, I can hear his voice, and suddenly life is much more expansive.
Yeah, and you get some people like that. They've got real passion. God's given them a sort of something to do in their workplace, and they get success. Now, often success in a workplace means more time engaged with that, less time available to church. Now, in the past, I said, hold on a minute, make sure.
I'm suspicious about your motivation.
Make sure you're in home group every week. You still will be. You still will be there. Well, actually, and I look back over the years, and there was, I think I would say can't say we've never had any controlling mechanisms in the church. It would be wrong to say that. But broadly speaking, we've been quite good on this, because there was one guy, and he worked in a very, very significant role within the country, to be honest. And he used to be up and away from home about 5 o'clock in the morning, getting home at 10 o'clock at night. And he was never at a home group meeting. He was never home. That bless him. His wife, family supported him. We supported him. But he would serve in church best he could, because he was engaged in it. But he said, "Look, Pete, this is all I can manage. I haven't got any time to prepare anything." And once every 4 weeks, he said, "You know what? I'll do the crèche. I don't have to do any preparation for that, but I know how to look after young children." And so every 4 weeks, I come in on a Sunday morning, and there's this guy, high-flying businessman, I'm very high-flying, with his bib on, looking after the kids in the crèche, and it used to make me cry.
Yeah.
But I thought, we valued his life, but he also wanted to be part of the community. But that was his self-control. This is what I can do, and our support of him. And,
I think in sort of conclusion that Free to Be is obviously about the people in the local church. Maybe we're talking to leaders, and we were saying this dream about a big, courageous people. But it's also about taking the burden off leaders. I think controlling culture, an over-functioning heart, taking over responsibility is a crushing, crippling burden that's not possible to carry.
No, and you're right. How many church leaders have burnout, timeouts, all sorts of things? And I think it was listening to John Mark Comer, who was saying, I think, of his class at theological school, I think, was he? I don't know how big his class was. I think he said he was the only one still running as a church leader, I think. Was that? Wow. Have you heard that?
I've read the book.
Yeah. So anyway, whatever it is, the statistics are alarming. vast majority weren't even, certainly not in church leadership, many of them not even expressing their Christianity anymore. That's wrong, isn't it? That is, so there's a model there of church leadership that is out there, and that's not common, there's not an uncommon reality, that is unhealthy. So the expectation, the burden placed upon people is obviously not a godly one, because Jesus' yoke is easy and light. So we have to somehow manage to redefine what church leadership looks like to make sure that it's a healthy outcome, not just for the individual, but their families. How many church leaders' families, the pastor's kid, I was a PK, pastor's kid, when you think, well, that's a terrible slight, isn't it? And I want to make sure my kids grew up healthy, and I'm glad they did. They did. And I think I told you there was one thing that would get my goat. I'm not easily angered, certainly in church. But there's one thing that really would annoy me quickly is when my children, as they were growing up, were treated differently to other children.
Right.
And it didn't happen very often because I was very careful about that. But I remember one time saying to my children, said, "Oh, I expected better of a Carter."
Okay.
Well, when I heard that, I went and had a chat. I said, "You will not treat my children any differently. If they do something wrong, then sort them out, because they're not perfect kids, but do not class them as something separate from all the other kids because of their surname."
And I'd like to finish with just that Chris Valentin thing. He said, if you feel overwhelmed and burdened and crushed by ministry, just make sure that you're not carrying the wrong burden.
Yeah.
That he describes that Jesus is the big ox,
Yeah.
and you're the little ox. You're in the yoke with him, but the ultimate responsibility is actually God's.
Yeah, and I'd say just that. I think a free culture will mean, as a church leader, you enjoy the fruit of that freedom as well.
Absolutely.